Hello and welcome back to Anthony Bourdain's Kitchen Confidential Adventures in the Culinary Underbelly. We have our last, overarching chapter here today, which is Coffee and Cigarettes, and it will be the end of this book series. My next book series, I'm not really sure. Right now I have The Old Man and the Sea ready to read. It's pretty short, and I have a flight coming up, so I'm thinking I may be able to read the whole thing on my flight there and back to where I'm going, and jot down what I'm thinking about, and hopefully I will be, well, not hopefully, I will commit myself to being more diligent about making the videos. So we can jump into it. Look for Old Man and the Sea by Ernest Hemingway, and we'll start with Coffee and Cigarettes, page 132. I was just discussing how the story of Scott Bryan and how he had to work very hard to get where he is, but now he's very successful and he's living the American dream. You know, he started out very poor and he did all the right things and he worked very hard and he was dedicated and disciplined, and now he runs very successful restaurants. And one big important takeaway, which Bourdain also highlights, is that Bourdain pretty much took any job that came his way, especially the executive chef jobs, because he wanted to start earning money right away and making more money than he would as a sous chef or a line cook. And Scott Bryan didn't. He took lower paying jobs so that way he could learn under people who were masters in their craft. And now Scott Bryan has that same meticulous approach, which makes him a master. And the way he runs his kitchen is not the pirate ship crew that Bourdain has, but it has elegance and grace. And it brings me into page 133, the Veritas, the restaurant that Scott Bryan, is the executive chef at. It reminded me of the episode titled Forks, which is season 3, episode something like 6 or 7 in The Bear, where I forget the character's name, but he's cousin. He was the best friend to the owner of the sandwich shop, and he has to go to that very fancy restaurant, and he starts off for several days just cleaning forks and putting them exactly where they need to be. And I mean, I loved that episode, and it helps teach people that even though something may be boring and monotonous, and you may think that it doesn't really matter how clean you put the forks and where you put them and stuff like that, but if you take the care and the time to do something, other people will see that and they'll appreciate that, and they'll come back and they'll want to come to you for something if you put a lot of care and a lot of appreciation into what you're doing. If you show the love, people will see that love and reciprocate that. They'll think fondly of you and what you've accomplished. Page 137, Bourdain talking about his flight to Tokyo and how he can't, smoke on the plane. I'm no smoker, but I just remember I flew to London one time, and I remember I saw it had only been 3 hours, and I went, oh my God, I have 7 more hours. And I started doing I started freaking out a little bit. Like I just grabbed my brother's arm, and I was just, oh my God. I'm trapped on this metal tube in the sky, and I can't go anywhere. All I can do is sit here, and I can't do anything. Oh man, that was terrible. But lately I've kind of gotten over that fear. I've gotten better, because I used to not have a fear of flying at all. I used to love it. And then after that flight, for whatever reason, something switched. Every time I felt turbulence, I would freak out. I would freak out in the middle of the flight, realizing I'm just in a metal tube in the sky. But I've gotten better as my flight amount of times I use a plane a year has actually gone up quite a bit. And so you kind of have to get used to it. But I realize, I work 9, 10 hour, 11 hour days sometimes. And I'm like, if I can sit at my desk and, look at a computer, look at Excel or whatever I'm doing every day for 9, 10 hours, sometimes very rarely 11 hours, then I can sit on this plane and watch a movie or play a game for 3 hours. Like, what am I getting all riled up about? I don't have to do anything but sit here and enjoy myself. So I've gotten better about the plane thing. Okay. Page 140, Bourdain talking about the portion sizes in Japan. I would go crazy. I am a stereotypical American. While I wouldn't consider myself obese, I do enjoy a lot of food. I do work out a lot to, burn all of that off. And actually, I'm on a pretty strict diet of what I eat. But, whenever you have your cheat day, it's like, oh, here we go. I love food. I love eating it, and I can eat a lot. So in Japan, I'd probably have to order a lot of food, especially since like fish does not really fill you up all that much, at least in my case. Maybe I just haven't eaten large amounts, but excuse me, I wouldn't say fish fills me up all that much. Page 142. Bourdain talking about how he wasn't sure what to do while he was in the city. I mean, he doesn't speak Japanese, but he just decided just to walk around and just explore the city and wander. And I honestly find myself doing that too. In a new neighborhood, I like to just wander around. I don't have my phone or anything. I just walk around and I see what's there. And when I moved to a new apartment, I hadn't really explored, and I just walked in a direction, and I came upon like this most beautiful park that I've ever seen. There's this wonderful pond there. You can fish, and there's people on a golf course next to it. It was incredible. And I just did that because I was wandering around. I went outside, and I really loved it. And if I was in his shoes, I would have done the same, just wandering the streets, seeing what I can do. When I drive a lot, I try to get to a place, and then a new place, I'll use the maps. And then on my way back, I try to just navigate on my own. I'm pretty good with directions. I have a pretty good sense of direction. And so I just try to figure it out on my own without the maps, even if it's dark or light, no matter what. I just try to retrace my steps and get back to where I was. Because then at one, I learn the route, so then I don't need the maps. And two, I don't know, I think it's fun to just try to get back to where I was. And so Bourdain's just walking around. You try to find that soba noodle shop to eat at. Yeah, because I wouldn't want my first meal in Japan being Starbucks either. So, but it can definitely be intimidating, especially in a country that doesn't really speak English. I know in Japan, sometimes they're not the fondest of foreigners. My friend was over there in Japan, and he had a friend that speaks and reads Japanese, and he's a Japanese American. And there was a sign on like a bar that said closed in English, and then in Japanese it said open. So it could definitely be intimidating being in Japan sometimes. Okay, let's see. Page 146, when he's describing the fish market, I mean, it would probably smell terrible, but it sounds amazing to explore just the area and see what thrives in the Japanese culture and what they like. I'm not sure if I brought this up before, but I had an experience where I was with 6 students from China and my friend from the US, and the Chinese students had set up hot pot for us. And what I learned from Bourdain actually is that you don't want to, food is the way to people's cultures, to their hearts, and it makes them happy. Everyone can bond over food, and people are very proud of what they produced. So he never tried to turn down anything anyone offered him, no matter if it would just destroy his stomach or if he was disgusted by it. He always accepted the food because it was always make the people happy. And in this hot pot, they had like duck blood and pig artery and tripe and a bunch of other stuff that is not traditional in America. And I decided that I was going to be Bourdain that night. I accepted all of the food. They were very, very happy that I did so. And I definitely have told this story, and I'm sorry for repeating it, but just people really can bond over food. And if just getting over your initial fear, and actually the duck blood was delicious. It was one of my favorite things that I had eaten that they gave me. So just getting over your initial fear, and if you can just put that in the back of your mind and just try to enjoy the people's company and what they're trying to do for you, it'll make their day, and maybe you find something new that you like. Okay. Page 148. There's a lot of rules that Bourdain has been going over, and his third rule is don't steal. He says even when he was poor and he needed food, going home at the end of the day knowing that he stole food from the kitchen just didn't make him feel good. And it reminded me of one of Peterson's quotes in 12 Rules for Life, and how Peterson was saying you can always sense when something's when what you're doing is right or wrong. You may not know the why, but you do know that something is wrong, and it doesn't make you feel good. So why would you do that thing? And so I think Bourdain was just pointing that out. Like if it doesn't make you feel good, if it makes you feel like a bad person, then you just gotta abstain, no matter how difficult it is. You just gotta choose not to do that thing, because you know it'll just make you feel worse. It'll make your life worse off. Okay. And, all of his rules in general, I guess, they're very helpful for your life. I mean, some of them are strictly for the restaurant business, and the restaurant business is probably a lot tougher than other situations. But at the end of the day, you just got to work hard and be the person you want to be. Like if you're going to do something and it makes you feel good, well then great. If it makes you feel bad, well maybe you carry that forward. Maybe not be miserable every day, but understanding that doing something, another similar task would make you feel equally as bad, so you probably shouldn't do that again. Okay, page 153, Bourdain talking about how food can transport him and in his childhood and wonder. We covered that, I think, in the first course when he had his first oyster, and what that did for him, and how it reminds me of that scene from Ratatouille, right? When the food critic eats the ratatouille and it transports him back to his childhood, and he falls in love again and with the food. And food can do wonderful things, and Bourdain describes it in a very wonderful way. So this is page 153. I have a quote here from Bourdain, and he's talking about the past restaurants that he worked for. He said, "I know I didn't do the best job for some of them, though I did the best I could have done at the time." And I like that quote because he's acknowledging that he wasn't a perfect person, and none of us are perfect people, and we are all at different stages in our life. But it's important what he says there in the second half of that line. He says, "I did the best I could at the time." And a lot of us are just doing the best that we can at the time. We don't always make the best decisions, and we can be really hard on ourselves, and maybe we're not performing the way we want to, but it's the best that we can do at the time. As long as we're doing the best that we can do at the time, I think we can, be a little less harsh on ourselves, and maybe you'll be able to fight out of that rut and do more than what you can at that time. But if you can just have a little grace with yourself and you do the best that you can at that time, I think you may be happier with your life. Always give it your best go, and even if you fail, you'll take that with you, and then you'll do the next thing even better. But that's going to do it for Kitchen Confidential. Look out for, The Old Man and the Sea by Ernest Hemingway. I hope you enjoyed. Catch you later.